Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to my talk today. My name is Damien, but you'll likely find me online under some form of the username Sign. I work for a managed service provider up in Canada as a security analyst. I have diplomas in IT systems administration and cybersecurity, and I have some random ISC and Microsoft certifications as well. So within cybersecurity, my main areas of interest are incident response, forensics, cloud security, and just OSINT for something that's a little different. I run a blog, which is cybercorner.tech. So there's actually the full article version of this talk. And then I have some other kind of cloud security, Azure research related articles that I've written as well. Some Showdown stuff as well. And my blog also has links to my socials, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn, shoot me an email, hit me up on Discord, anything you really want. I'm moderately friendly to strangers. Just to provide some structure, this is what I'll be going over today. So first, I'll actually tell you about the incident that this presentation got its name from. Then I'll tie this incident to the MITRE attack cloud matrix. Then I'll go over common indicators of compromise for business email compromise. Then I'll cover, and this has to be really quick, it's like a slide. It's some technical and administrative controls for actually managing the risk around business email compromise. And then after that, if we have time, we can go over some questions, or like I said previously, you can message me on LinkedIn, send me an email, leave a comment on my blog, and I'll do what I can to answer your questions. And I should also just mention that when you look up what CEO fraud actually is, it isn't quite this, but CEO fraud just sounds a lot cooler than high severity business email compromise with executive account. So that's what I chose to call it. So what was the incident? Well, first I'll go over discovery. So January 10th, 2023. It was a day like any other. I was doing an audit. Specifically, I was doing an audit for a customer, which I'll call Company X. So part of my job is actually doing security audits for our customers, which we roughly base on the CIS baselines. And I mean, to be completely honest, I'll admit that I find the audits to be one of the more tedious parts of my job, but I mean, somebody has to do it. So I was actually working through an audit backlog that I definitely only occasionally let build up. So I'd been spending, I think, the last 3 or 4 days just doing audits. So I mean, can you blame me for maybe going and sniffing around for a little bit of trouble? I mean, an audit is a great time to do a threat hunt, and checking a few indicators of compromise wouldn't actually take me that long. And I promise this wasn't Twitter, actually. I wrote this before Twitter became X, which I still refuse to call it X. So I do remember thinking, and I love this, don't ever think this, but I remember thinking, I'm so bored with these audits. I wish I had something more interesting to do right now, like a business email compromise. Don't ever think that way. So I checked the most common indicator of compromise within Microsoft 365, which is what Company X uses for its productivity suite. This indicator of compromise is suspicious sign-ins, so you can just export them from the all-user sign-in log in Azure. And I did exactly that. You open it up in Excel because my incident response is very sophisticated. I use Excel. And then you filter out the known good IP addresses and cities. And after I did that, I was left with one account that had some strange sign-ins. So it was sign-ins from the city we're in and Los Angeles within hours of each other, just classic impossible travel. So when I used an IP lookup tool on the IP addresses, it matched known suspicious VPN or proxy servers. So Company X at the time had an internal IT type person. So I sent him the sign-in logs for the user and asked him, hey, is this expected behavior? He got back to me really surprisingly quickly for knowing this guy, and told me it was not expected behavior, and just asked to get an idea of what files were accessed. And then I also just worked with him to reset the user's password because, compromised account. So, perfect. Now I had something to do other than an audit. So next, I needed to complete my RCA. So it's basically a document that I put together where I just detail the incident from discovery, remediation, why it happened. But I find most importantly what actually happened during the incident. So what happened and how did I actually reach my conclusion? So it wasn't until I had actually began my investigation that I realized that the affected user was actually the CEO of Company X. I was reviewing the file access records when I saw that there was a lot of access to the executive SharePoint site, and this prompted me to actually check the user's job title in Azure. So you can imagine this immediately raised the stakes quite a bit. I was, low-key sweating a little bit at this point. But so how did I actually do my investigation and what did I discover? So first, I requested a 90-day inbound and outbound message trace for the compromised account, which gave me just over 3,000 results. I then started an export for 90 days of user activity from the Unified Audit Log, or the UAL. It gave me just over 17,000 records. So this isn't a lot to me now, but at the time, I had maybe investigated less than a dozen email compromises, and I'm completely self-taught with this as well. So I was like, this was more than I'd ever really gotten. So I knew I needed something to make it easier to investigate. So I started using the Hawk Forensics tool for investigating Microsoft 365 business email compromise. And that provides you with some more granular logs. So I got a 90-day exchange audit log and a converted authentication log, and it just uses an IP address lookup API to match IPs to locations. So it saves you a lot of hassle if you don't program something like that yourself. So anybody who's actually investigated a email compromise, you know the next steps. You need to very tediously review the audit logs and separate records from known good IP addresses and suspicious IP addresses. Then you just do that with all the other really audit logs that you found, and then you kind of just have a pile of information. So it's really pretty, it's a very similar to a puzzle, I find. So you just have to put it together. So we're going to look at this in a timeline. After some investigation, I determined that November 7th, 2022 was the likely date of initial access. Although I did have, with the UAL, I had records going back to October 12th. So this was the first suspicious sign-in on the account, and there was also a defender alert that I found buried in some mailbox somewhere about a malicious URL click on the CEO's account. So that means that CEO fell victim to a phishing link, but at the time, Microsoft didn't think it was malicious. Big surprise if you know Microsoft spam filtering. But later they determined that it was malicious, sent an alert. Nobody ever saw the alert. So that's really truly the root cause in that RCA. But then if you remember, January 10th, 2023 was the date of discovery and the start of my investigation. So the next account access after the initial access was actually on November 11th. And so this was where many emails and files specifically about Company X's dealings with a financial company were accessed. So obviously our threat actor had a plan because they created an inbox rule to redirect all email from the financial company to the RSS subscriptions folder. Absolute classic. So after this point, there weren't really any specific activities on the account for a period of a couple of weeks. I classify this as just reconnaissance, as there were several sign-ins with various emails and files accessed, invoices, contracts, templates, stuff like that. So then November 30th is when things actually start to get serious. The threat actor emails the financial company with a request to add a new authorized signer to the account and asks really what information is needed. The financial company responds with a list of personal data that's needed and some documents. On December 2nd, the threat actor responds with the information and signed documents. It's on this email that the threat actor CCs the supposed new treasurer, who is using an independent email address with a custom domain name. That's the sort of thing an independent CPA would use. December 5th, the financial company responds with several more documents that need to be signed for the new signer to be added. December 7th, the threat actor replies, and they provide signed copies of the documents, but the financial company finds a problem with one of them and it needs to be re-signed. December 12th, the threat actor sends the proper documents. They also register another domain, which is like, a copycat typo squat of company X's main domain. They also create more inbox rules to similarly redirect email from the fake CPA domain and the typo squat domain. So after this, there's a lot of just back and forth, primarily while the financial company just asks some clarifying questions like, is so-and-so still going to be a signer on the account? Stuff like that. The threat actor is also like very impatiently emailing the financial company every couple days, just bothering them about when the new signer is going to be added. So December 21st, the threat actor emails them once again asking for an update. The financial company responds, and they actually said that the National Bank Independent Network, or the NBIN, has gotten involved, which is like a overseer for portfolio and investing management companies. They request more information, which is provided. And then finally, December 23rd, the new treasurer was added to the finance account as an authorized signer. So I should mention that up to this point, all communication about this whole thing from November 7th to December 23rd, all been via email. At no point did anybody from the financial company pick up the phone and call the CEO or any other signer on the account to confirm. Yeah, I'll tell you how that went at the end of the day. So now it gets serious. Yeah, I was very surprised too. They were it was almost a lawsuit, which I would not have wanted to be involved in. So the threat actor actually seems to have taken a break for Christmas and New Year's, it seems, because the next account activity was actually on January 4th. So at this point, the threat actor initiated a wire transfer with the CEO's account, advising them to coordinate with the fake treasurer and asking what information would be required. After some back and forth, the fake treasurer initiated a wire transfer to a bank account in Hong Kong, and this was for $710,000 USD, which at the time with conversion was roughly $950,000 Canadian. On January 6th, the transfer was finalized. Psych. On January 9th, the threat actor sent an email advising that the wire was not received, and the wire was then resubmitted, and this time it actually went through. So I'd mentioned earlier that January 10th was when I discovered the incident, but I wasn't actually able to complete my investigation on this date. I continued my investigation on January 11th, and I had to check my ticket notes actually, and it was at approximately 11:50 a.m. So also on January 11th, at 10:36 a.m., the threat actor sent another wire transfer to Hong Kong for this time what was roughly $1.3 million Canadian, which I believe was like conversion at the time. I think that's over $1 million USD. So I'd discovered the January 4th wire transfer first, and at this point I knew this one had already gone through, so I just was like, I'll just not gonna call them. They're gonna want to talk to me for an hour. I'm just gonna investigate up to this current date. So like 2 minutes later, I discovered that the second transfer had been sent at this point, like less than 2 hours earlier. So I really hoped that there would be time to stop this. So I called the internal IT person who just happened to be in the CEO's account, and I had him put me on speakerphone, and I asked if the CEO was aware that 2 wire transfers had been sent from Company X's bank account to a bank in Hong Kong, and one of those transfers being, less than 2 hours ago. I mean, he obviously wasn't. And with like as much professional urgency in my voice as I could muster, I told him to call the financial company and cancel the transfer, which he thankfully did. And I pushed professional urgency because he didn't believe me at some point. He was like, "How do you know this?" And I was like, "Oh my God, call your bank, call your bank, call your bank." I was like he believed that now I have a great relationship with Company X. They're like my biggest fan, and if I tell them to do something now, they do it. So you don't be afraid to bring out your like stern voice if you ever get into this, because sometimes they just need it. So after this, I really just continued on. I completed my investigation and put together an incident RCA document. I sent the RCA document as well as all of the logs and exported emails to internal IT, and eventually at their request, we got law enforcement involved as well. So the good news is that the financial company refunded Company X for the money that was stolen. A couple weeks after the incident, I got some more information from Company X, who said that the financial company admitted that they did not follow their internal process for adding authorized signers nor making like large fund transfers. So anybody who also like just looked at Company X's records would see that there is no reason for them to transfer money to Hong Kong. I can't say like what industry they're in or what they do, but there's basically no reason for them to transfer money outside of even Canada. So who hacked Company X? I mean, I have no idea. And from what I've heard now, a year and a half later, the police still haven't even started investigating. So I don't know if it was an APT, but this was not really a simple heist, like changing an employee's banking details. They knew the lingo, they knew to wait for New Year's, so sending a wire transfer on like Christmas Day would be suspicious. This was not somebody working alone. But like I said, we'll probably never know. All we can really do is learn from this and really improve our security posture so that we don't become this threat actor's next victim. So if you don't know what MITRE is, I think I think it's China. It's China, of course it's China. Hong Kong, it's China, right? That's the most attribution I can do. So I don't have time to go over like what MITRE is. Google it is how I'm going to say that nicely, please. Originally in this talk, I ranted for about a minute about how much the MITRE Cloud Matrix first version sucked. It sucked a bunch. And I like to think that somebody at MITRE like heard me rant about it and they actually fixed it, because the new version of the MITRE Cloud Matrix is a lot better. So, we have resource development. They had to get that fake domain. They had to actually compromise the account. Phishing was obviously the initial access vector. It was a cloud account. Multi-factor authentication was enabled on the account, which makes me think it was, the evil Nginx like based kind of token theft phishing website. And once they were in, they added a new authentication method for that sort of persistence. They created those inbox rules. They deleted emails that were sent. And because it was, the evil Nginx phishing, I'm assuming they were passing some cookies. They collected information from SharePoint. And also I had like a ton of just different email protocols that they were taking emails from. And obviously the impact was almost $1 million stolen. So I'll very quickly touch on some common indicators of compromise and malicious activity that happened during an email compromise. So the first is impossible travel or other suspicious authentication locations or properties. You always log in from New York and suddenly you're using a sketchy VPS from Russia, or you're always using Windows and now suddenly you're using Linux. Obviously something is wrong there. So forwarding changes or email rules or filters are one of the most common forms of malicious activity. So they'll redirect certain senders or subjects to a folder, or just delete all incoming emails that are received. And the latter is used almost exclusively, I find, in cases where an account is sending out spam. So emails being unexpectedly read or deleted from certain folders or the trash is another common indicator of compromise. And then when an account is accessed, you'll often see records of email and file access around sensitive information. So a lot of these tools that threat actors will use during an email compromise have the ability to automatically search the inbox for certain keywords or file types. So, credit, Visa, debit, payment, invoice. And this is so they can find, information about your who you do business with, your invoices, or sometimes they find that list of passwords in an Excel spreadsheet stored in SharePoint. Because I get that probably every maybe two out of every dozen email compromises. They have that list, and I have to say, hey, that password list in SharePoint? Change every password. And you should have changed it about a week ago because that's when they accessed it. Sorry, if you want me to help, it's an exclusion, $10,000, hourly billable. Have fun. So don't do that, please. And then this final one is one that I've seen in increasing frequency, which is OAuth application usage. So you can use it for OAuth phishing by the user consenting to a malicious app that they don't know about it. But I've never actually seen that in the wild. I've only seen the actual threat actor consenting to the application themselves. So that's for things like persistence, auto sending, or my least favorite, which is just downloading all the emails. If you check out my blog, I've written 2 articles about a application that I see commonly used during email compromise. So the first is Perfect Data Software, which just exports all email in the inbox to a PST. And the second one is EM Client, which is just an alternative mailbox access client. They will sometimes also register applications directly in the Azure tenant. And that is also not a great activity, but there's some really good threat intelligence articles Microsoft has published that are only available from the Security Admin Center if you're logged in. So thanks, Microsoft. And then because we have no time, is it going to be here? Here's the suggested controls. I can't really go over them in specifics, but take a screenshot. I go over them in a bit more specifics in my actual blog. And a lot of these are just, I consider them pretty standard controls for protecting your Office 365 or email environments in general. Alerting is very, very important, I find. If you're an MSP, you can use a SIM called Blumira, Cloud SIM, completely free Cloud SIM, and you can abuse it. And they might eventually take it away, but just keep leaving them good reviews, and they'll let you keep it. So I'm gonna go to this next slide. Oh, I forgot I had included that transition. I love that transition. Here's some QR codes. Scan them. I promise they're probably fine.
What recommendation suggestions do you have for companies that have users across the globe and the number of users are 100,000?
So my MSP, we help SMBs, and our biggest client is about 200 people. So I don't really have any firm recommendations. I know that one of the ones that I recommend really is conditional access policies and enforcing that a device that's being used to access stuff is enrolled in Intune or some form of MDM, and then locking down that enrollment for MDM. So that way, they can't enroll for MDM if they're not a legitimate person. And if they're not an MDM, they can't access shit. So it's fine, probably. There's ways to get around it, but I don't know. So
There's,
the actual
go ahead.
company that it was like an investment banking thing. So they used it as kind of savings, and the investment bank would invest their savings into stuff and get the nonprofit. This was a nonprofit. I think I didn't mention it was a nonprofit. I think I can mention that much.
How important is attribution in investigations like this?
Really kind of depends. For an SMB, they don't really care. The clients don't really care. Um, I think once you start getting to enterprise, it becomes a little more important. But in order to even do attribution, you just need a lot of resources that somebody who's working in SMB just doesn't have. So if you can do it, I think it's nice. But at the end of the day, if you can't, then it's um as a security analyst, I am duties as required. I installed a TV once. Small business security analyst at an MSP. I literally do whatever. So
Any type of small IT team, I think, struggles with that. Is there a projector? Oh, IT,
what point
TV,
did
yeah,
my
that's
work
IT.
stop? Um, so I kind of this this incident caused me to have a legitimate mental breakdown from stress. So we kind of redid our process where if I get to a point where I'm like, I can't take this, we push it to their cyber insurance if they have it. If they don't, we push it to a partner incident response firm, and we're firm on that because I say like I'm putting my hands up. I don't want to have a mental breakdown again. I can't do this. And so definitely that's my advice to people. Do not let yourself have a mental breakdown. It's not worth it. They don't care about you enough for you to have a mental breakdown, especially about this. It's not the end of the day. Or
That's
sorry, it's not the end of the world.
that is the best advice that you could give, I think. Like probably some of the best advice all day. Don't don't get to that point. And I completely agree. If you all feel like you're struggling with that, definitely step back, take a break, reach out for help in any way that you can, for sure.
I literally had to go to like single session drop in counseling and I just cried for like an hour.
Terrible.
Um
Terrible.
so, so yeah, I guess we probably kind of have to wrap it up. I guess the LinkedIn QR code doesn't work. Maybe scan the mystery QR code, have fun with that. Like I said, blog, LinkedIn, message me. I'm friendly. I might respond eventually.